After Daphne was born, Glenn and I toyed with the idea of not having more children. We wanted more, but with the future of our economy and freedom looking bleak, we wanted to first make sure we could provide and protect our little ones. But as often happens with couples in love, we received a pleasant surprise the day before his birthday last year. We discovered we were pregnant again. And as unsure as we were about the future, we were both very happy. Once again, I had a normal, healthy pregnancy and prepared for another home birth. This time around, one of my biggest hopes was that I would be able to start labor on my own. Although both Nemo and Daphne's births took place with minimal intervention, I still used herbs, acupressure, and castor oil to jumpstart them. I knew in my head that I could start labor on my own, but until March 1st, 2010, I did not know this with my body. The day before his birth, Sunday, February 28th, I was getting discouraged. I had been having irregular, semi-progressive contractions for about 9 days, bloody show for 2 days, and the contractions were now getting very crampy. Even though I knew I would be giving birth soon, and my body was doing everything perfectly, it didn't feel like birth was at all in the near future. Glenn would have to go back to work the next day, which meant being by myself with our 2 toddlers while having crampy, prodromal labor, and I desperately wanted to start labor on my own. So Sunday night, we took the kids out to eat for dinner and tried to carry on life as usual. Monday, March 1st, 4 a.m. The full moon of the previous evening apparently worked its magic on me because I woke up feeling I was peeing myself. But when I tried to stop the flow, more gushed out, as also happened every time I inched my way closer to the edge of my bed. When I stood up, fluid was running down my legs, and I knew for sure my water broke. Glenn was wide awake in no time. I made my way to the bathroom with a pair of pants bunched between my legs, cleaned up, and then laid back down in bed with more towels. I called my midwife, who said I should try to rest until the contractions were coming closer together. But of course, Glenn and I could only catnap. By 5 or 5:30, the contractions were coming 4 minutes apart, and I was breathing through all of them. I knew it was the day, and could only think about how exciting it was that I did not have to induce myself this time. At 6 a.m., Glenn called his parents to have them pick up the kids, and I called my mom and Shyla, my primary midwife, to let them know they should start making their way over. I ate a bowl of Cheerios and honey, knowing that if I waited much longer, I wouldn't feel like eating. Already, I had to stop frequently to breathe through contractions. Glenn began cleaning the house as his adrenaline kicked in, and I listened to my Hypnobaby's birthday affirmation CD to help me relax and get into the right frame of mind for an easier birth. I think using Hypnobabies did help because even though I didn't use my light switch, I was able to quietly breathe through the contractions a lot longer than with Daphne's birth. And my mom later mentioned that the midwives had a hard time telling where I was in labor because I was acting so calm, even though I didn't feel so calm. My in-laws had left with the kids around 7:30 a.m., and my mom walked in at the same time. I began listening to the first stage of labor CD, and my mom and Glenn took turns comforting me, preparing the birth room, and straightening the downstairs. I planned to give birth in the living room, so Glenn inflated the air mattress and brought in the birth supplies I had been collecting on the dining room table. My primary hangout became the couch, leaning back on the beanbag with a rice sock on my back and one on my lower belly. My back ached, but my belly was still uncomfortably crampy, so I couldn't decide which position felt better, leaning forward or backward, and finally decided an achy back was preferable to a crampy stomach. Anyway, around 9 a.m., I went to the bathroom, and when I came back to the living room, I sat down on the ball, leaning over the arm of the couch. My mom and Glenn took turns massaging my back and giving counter-pressure, which helped considerably. Once the first stage of labor CD was over, Glenn put on some instrumental music, and I was able to continue relaxing to the peaceful sound it made. We all guessed, based on the birth of Daphne, that my midwives would arrive, and then this baby would fall out around 10 a.m., and although I had been feeling his head putting pressure on my cervix well before the midwives arrived around 9:30, I was surprised that I was not yet feeling the urge to push. The contractions were intense, especially when Atlas kicked against them. Although I was anxious for things to move along, I was also mentally aware that would mean more intensity. Around 10:30, once again sitting on the couch, my midwife recommended I go pee again. When I came back from the bathroom, I wanted so much to lie down and go to sleep. Even though it hurt more during the contractions, lying down on the mattress made it so much easier to relax between them. At this point, nothing really takes away the intensity anyway, and you have to mentally cross that hurdle of transition between active labor and pushing. I think within 15 minutes I was starting to push, which was the first time my midwife checked my cervix. But because I was in a side-lying position, and perhaps due to the surprising position Atlas was born in, it took a while for my urges to get strong enough that I could push effectively more than once during a contraction. I knew I needed to change positions to get him out, but I was just so tired that it took some encouragement from my team to get me to move. I remember my mom asking me how I wanted to push him out, and I responded, "Just tell me what to do," simply because I didn't want to move unless someone told me to. I also remember saying more than once while pushing, "I'm done. I'm just so done." And my support team emphasized that I would be done very soon, holding my baby in my arms. It seems funny that I have said that myself countless times before as a doula, and yet as a mother I need to hear it from someone else. I moved to hands and knees on the mattress, resting over the ball. It made for an awkward position for my supporters, but was such a relief for my joints compared to the hardwood floor. Well, my baby Atlas was a big boy. I had to push really, really hard, and it burned, but they encouraged me to move beyond the stinging, and I kept pushing. I later discovered I had burst a blood vessel in my right eye, which I found strange since I only pushed like that a couple times, or so I remember anyway. As his head crowned, I felt him with my hand, and I thought it felt more like a brow facing my pubic bone. When his head came out, we realized he was posterior. No wonder it took so much work. He was trying to cry before his body was born, and Shyla said she had to help his first shoulder because he was very snug and she didn't want it to pop out and tear me. Glenn helped Shyla catch him, and he flopped out onto the mattress. What a relief. I just felt like collapsing onto the bed and going to sleep for a while, even though I was also excited to meet my baby boy. I believe it was Glenn who announced the gender, and he was very excited because he was hoping for a boy. Later, Shyla said she knew Atlas was transverse during labor, and wondered which way he would turn. While I was pushing, he decided to turn posterior, but although she suspected it, she didn't know for sure until he was crowning. Then when his head came out, she said, "Wow, this is a big baby," and decided to give a little help with that first shoulder. He got a perfect score on his APGARs, 10 and 10, and I only reopened the same first-degree tear I had with Nemo and Daphne, which I once again decided to let heal without stitches. They held me onto my side and brought Atlas to me, but we had to cut the cord soon after because it was pretty short, just like my last two, and I couldn't bring him to my chest. Glenn, of course, cut the cord. And oh, how wonderful it felt to just lie there beside him and just bask in the relief and magic of the moment. I was quite out of breath for a few minutes. Glenn held Atlas while I got back onto hands and knees to push out the placenta. I tried it while lying down, but it was so awkward with what felt like no stomach muscles. Then I got to nurse him, which he figured out right away. I think before I nursed him was when my midwives weighed and measured him, and boy was I shocked to hear how much he weighed. I didn't expect him to pass 9 pounds, even if I had been joking about it for a while. And he weighed 9 pounds, 9 ounces, and his chest was 1.5 inches bigger than his head. I think we had at least an hour to ourselves before visitors started arriving, but they were quite spaced out, so I didn't feel overwhelmed by visitors at all. Nemo and Daphne came to visit a couple hours later. After the initial shock Daphne had at discovering there was a baby in bed with me, they were both very happy to meet Atlas. They later went home with their grandparents for the night, and Glenn and I had a very nice evening relaxing and visiting, getting to know our precious new child, a day I will never forget.